Olá, meu nome é Aaron Cutler. Eu faço parte da equipe de curadoria de longas-metragens no Festival Olhar de Cinema. Desculpe pelo meu sotaque. Eu sou dos Estados Unidos originalmente e moro no Brasil faz 10 anos. A equipe de curadoria de longas, junto a Antônio Júnior, Eduardo Valente, Camila Macedo e Carla Italiano. Em 2018, passamos belo filme do cineasta romeno Radu Jude chamado A Nação Morta. E vamos passar este ano novamente novo filme de Radu chamado Letra Maiúscula. O filme passa na mostra Novos Olhares, uma mostra competitiva de 6 longas-metragens, e temos honra enorme Radu aqui com a gente para conversar a respeito do filme. Radu é um cineasta muito conhecido no mundo. Já fez 8 longas-metragens junto a diversos curtas-metragens e vários dos filmes dele já passaram também na Mostra Internacional de Cinema de São Paulo, entre eles Afarim, Corações Cicatrizes e Eu Não Me Importo se entrarmos para a história como bárbaros. Para quem tiver interesse em conhecer melhor as ideias do Radu, especialmente em relação a este filme, após essa conversa, eu também posso destacar uma entrevista que ele fez com o jornalista brasileiro Bruno Carmelo. Essa entrevista com Bruno Carmelo foi publicada no site Papo de Cinema após o Festival de Berlim este ano. Então, bem-vindo, Radu. Welcome, Radu.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation.
The pleasure is ours. I did pronounce your name correctly, yes, Radu Jude.
It's Radu Jude, actually.
Radu Jude.
It's fine.
Okay.
We can call it Jude for the sake of it.
Radu Jude. So the first question comes from my colleague, Camila Macedo, who cannot be here today, but admires your work and in many different ways is an extraordinary film programmer. And she writes, the film Uppercase Print is based on a play called Uppercase Print, written by Giannina Carbonariu, who is also credited as the film's co-writer. Are the film's aspects of artificiality and distanciation, which could or could not be called Brechtian, depending on how one feels about that term, things that were already present on the stage in the original stage production, or are these qualities that you specifically brought in adapting this work for the screen?
Well, it's a little bit complicated to answer because first of all, her play, Giannina's play, is not specifically a play like a normal drama creation, like somebody's writing a play, like Chekhov wrote a play or Ibsen wrote a play, or I don't know. It's actually a found object, a found text, so to speak. It's a document, the Securitate, the secret police file of a kid from 1981, unknown until she found it together with 2 historians, Mihai Burcea and Mihail Bumbeș. And she found, what I found extraordinary in the play was the fact that all the texts were documents from this big file of this teenager, Mugur Călinescu. The way she did the play was not specifically Brechtian. In a way, I would say it was more cinematic than the film I've done. And it was one of the desire I wanted to make a film more like theater than the play she directed is. It was a show where she used a lot of projections, a lot of video in the play. It was very lively, very with the mise-en-scène, a little bit more cinematical, so to speak. So I would say that no, these ideas were more mine. And of course, they appeared also in the discussions with Giannina to make it differently and to use somehow the cinematic. Actually, one of the point of making the film was, for me at least, to try to make cinema using elements which do not traditionally belong to cinema. And one of this was theater, and I wanted to be more Brechtian, so to speak, more theater-like than the play itself was.
And why was that?
Well, as I said, because I wanted to see, maybe it comes from 2 or 3 directions, I would say. One of it is what I said before. I wanted the film to have no cinematic, no traditionally cinematic elements, but to remain cinema in the same time. Because also the archive part is television archive, is not really artistical, so to speak, archive. It's not, they don't have necessarily an artistical dimension. Then the second thing is, because I wanted to give the feeling that what we show on screen, it's not, you know, a reenactment, psychological reenactment of a situation, a historical film, so to speak, but we are showing documents and the information from the documents. And so this, the characters, the actors, so to speak, are not really human beings or human beings. They are not impersonating human beings. They are impersonating the remains of some facts of these human beings, the remains which are only the text in the document. So if we have only the text, then I said I would do very little apart from delivering the text to the audience. And this is why there's no psychological, as much as possible, no psychological side to the characters. They are not really characters. They are more like, how you say, holograms, more or less.
Yeah. That makes sense. The play was originally performed. It was performed for the first time in 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And it refers to a real-life case, obviously. The script comes from Securitat files, secret police, from a case that occurred in 1981. Did you film an actual production, a production that had been mounted and was occurring at the time, or were these actors from the production that you gathered together for the specific film?
No. I did it from the scratch. So I took the text, we worked on it with Janina, we took the file again. I can show you the file, actually. This is the file that we took, and these are actually from Janina's working on the file. I'm not sure if you can see it. Well, it looks like
we
that.
See the different colors. What do the different colors refer to?
The different colors is from Janina when she worked on it for the play, and it's she tried to find the chronology in the file because it's not chronologically organized. So you can see this is the maps. So actually we took again the script. I mean this file. You see, quite,
yes.
Quite. Yes, it's full of, it's really 1,000 pages or even more. This is the writing of the Mugur Călinescu, actually.
Yes, these are texts written by the boy himself.
Yes, by the boy himself.
Yes.
And so we took this file again, and we worked on it because she left out some things from the file in the play, and I wanted them in because, of course, it's the file is, I don't know, almost 1,000 pages. You cannot have all in a film. You have to make a selection. So we selected what she selected for the play is 80% what's in the film, but there are other things that they added in the film that she didn't consider them, I don't know, important or necessary in the play she did. Actually.
So this is a secret police file of nearly 1,000 pages, about devoted to a teenage boy who made public acts of graffiti writing, and as a result of writing graffiti, was considered an enemy of the state and a dangerous person. Yeah. So I want to in addition to marveling at the simple fact, ask you, because a major part of what is of interest in your cinema, it seems to me, is unearthing different, let us say, buried or occulted episodes of Romanian history. I want to ask you how well known this episode is in Romania today, how iconic or emblematic it is considered to be as an act of resistance against the Ceausescu regime, importance it holds for Romanian society and thinking today.
Well, here I think are two things important to discuss. One is related with the fact that this film is not problematical for the Romanian zeitgeist of today, because most of the people acknowledge the fact that the communist dictatorship was horrible, or it had at least many horrible aspects. Nobody denies it. The problem is, and this is why I somehow I didn't hesitate to make the film, but the fact is that this anti-communist direction, anti-communism of the people and of the authorities and of the intelligentsia sometimes is used in order to hide the fascist past of Romania. And I saw that with my own eyes when I made the films related with the fascist past of Romania. The first question, the first attack that appeared every time was, why not speaking about the communist time? Why? Let's forget the fascist past. Let's speak about the communist time. And so I had not hesitated, but somehow I thought that if I wouldn't find the desire to make the film was not specifically, not only the topic of the film, not only the subject, but the form of the film. And this is what prompted me to ask Janina to work on the script and make the film, because I saw the play in 2013, but we started to work on the script in 2017. So it took me 4 years to came to the conclusion that the film should be made because of that. And because your question is if the case is well known and so on, I would say that no. And this is one of the reasons Janina made the play. One of the reasons I also did the film is because there was no big resistance to Ceausescu's regime. And this is, first of all, because it was very brutal and it was somehow very, very difficult to have a real resistance. I'm not saying it was impossible, because there were people resisting or being dissidents or being attacking the regime head on, but they were punished severely, sometimes losing their life and so on. But after the 1989 revolution, everybody seemed to have been against the regime in one way or another, which is of course not true and the lie. I mean, intellectuals especially say, well, we were against the regime, we are resisting through our writings, through our culture, I don't know, staging Shakespeare in theater and so on, which is not a resistance in my opinion, not at all. And the ones who really resisted more or less, like the writer Paul Goma, who's also a supporter of a rabid anti-Semite in the last years. He died not long ago, but he was a real resistant to the regime. This is undeniable. I cannot deny this aspect, but this kind of people were, their memory or the memory of their acts was much more lively or more talked about and shown, because they were, I think it's a class element here as well. They were intellectuals. They had the meaning after the revolution to speak about what they've done, or others around them, the people who knew them spoke about them. But in the case of the workers who resisted the regime, like the workers in 1987 who made a protest and a strike, and they were arrested and tortured in Brașov in 1987, they don't speak about because they don't have the language, they're not intellectuals. And in the case of this boy who eventually died before the 1989 revolution, it's also a class element. I mean, nobody would speak about, or fewer people would speak about a young teenager from a working class background, from a small provincial city, because as I said before, they concentrate on the big names, big intellectuals, journalists, politicians. So this is one of the reasons we made the film, I would say.
I see. Great. This speaks to this question focus that you're talking about of who history prioritizes has to do with another question that Camila asked, which is that the film begins with a quote from the French philosopher Michel Foucault, and more specifically, a quote from an essay he wrote in 1977 called The Lives of Infamous Men, A Vida dos Homens Infames in Portuguese. If I have it correctly, the quote is, "The resonance I feel when I happen to encounter these small lives reduced to ashes in the few sentences that struck them down."
Yeah. Yeah, and it speaks about the feeling that you have when you find a life wasted in a text like that, like the one from the Securitate Fire. And this is when I got on the text of Foucault, I decided to put it on the as a kind of a motto.
That makes sense. Foucault was known for his work with archival excavation, dealing with archival material, and also for his methods and ways of analyzing the discourses that he found in archival material. Yeah. And this sort of double practice of finding and analyzing is something that is common in this film and in your broader work. So
let's say proportion gardée.
Okay. Proportion gardée. This idea of finding and analyzing does eventually lead us to another strong element of the film, which is the television material that is intercalated with the theatrical scenes, archival material from Romanian state television. And Camille and I both want to know how these images, the sounds and the discourses they create, which herald from the Ceausescu period, how you use them within the film as a text to shape the film and interact with the other elements of the film, and also how you wanted them to speak and comment upon the Romania of today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this material didn't exist in Janina's play. And it was an idea that appeared little by little to me. And I think it's because of not only my previous work with other archives, but also my interest, let's say, theoretical in the problems of montage, seen not only as editing together a story in order to create a story, but to clash the images in order to create new meanings or new emotions or new something. And of course, this is a line that starts with Walter Benjamin and with Eisenstein and with Brecht and with, I don't know, André Malraux from his art history books, and Jordi de Huberman, and I don't know, Godard, and it is a line which is quite big, but not very well represented, I would say. I would say that the montage is usually done by, and sometimes, of course, brilliantly, and I'm not criticizing, but usually it's made only in order to create stories, being fictional, documentary, archival stories, I don't know, all kinds of stories. The montage is used. Some people consider the film to have a connection with the film of Andrei Ujică, Autobiography of Nicolae Ceausescu. And I would say it's completely the opposite, because Andrei Ujică used materials in order to create a story, to construct a story. And I used these materials in order to break a story, to break it down, to not let the story all the time to form itself. And then when this idea came to me, I decided to use all kinds of materials first, like photographs, images from the fiction films, from documentaries, from television archive, from radio, everything. And starting the work in the television archive, little by little, I discovered that it's enough to use this archive, because you have to limit yourself anyway in order, because otherwise you get lost with the amount of materials. But most of all because somehow the television was in the 80s the beacon, the most important element of the propaganda of the regime. Fiction films, some of fiction films like Mircea Daneliuc's films are even more or less against the regime in a very soft way and very hidden way, but they are against the regime. So it was more freedom in fiction films or in literature or in photography than it was in television. So this was the idea to have the two poles of the self-representation of the regime clashing together. One is the secret small history of this boy as told by the Securitate file. And this is never to be forgotten. And maybe this is also another aspect why the film is so artificial, because it's not a story, it's a story told as told by a Securitate, a secret police. The secret police is telling the story. And the other story is the self-representation of the nation using the language of TV, of the emergent television. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, that was great. Something that's interesting, I've heard you speak about Eisenstein a lot in reference to your ideas behind editing, specifically with this film. And something that struck me is that when we speak about the Russian formalists in general, we're speaking about artists who use the tools of cinema in part to construct or help construct an idea of a communist state.
Yeah.
And in this film, you're using montage in crucial ways, to me, to deconstruct the ideas behind a communist state or deconstruct certain ideas behind it. One, do you agree? And two, if you do agree that you are using irony in some way, how is irony important to your montage and to the way that you want to tell or retell or show history?
Yeah. Well, it's true what you said regarding Eisenstein. Maybe it's a perversion of the film, as a friend of mine said. But I think the ideas of Eisenstein, because it's more, I would say, I'm using, or I'm interested also not only in the films of Eisenstein, because the ideas regarding montage, you don't find them all in his films. You find more of his ideas in his texts or in his essays, in his
writings.
In his writings, yes. And I'm speaking more about this than piece of montage that he did in the film, which is not as at the level of his theoretical writings. That's one thing. But I think the ideas can be there if you know what I mean. So I think they are not working on a limited time frame or for a limited ideology. I think they are a kind of they come from an observation of something that became the rule after the appearance of television, and not mentioning the internet. Any meme on the internet is using a kind of montage. So, but we are not, I mean, we as audience, we are not all the time aware of that, and we are not thinking where does this come from, and if it can be a tool of, let's say, an epistemological tool, if it can bring a kind of knowledge, because it's really complicated, because montage also, it's very easy to use for propaganda, for lying, for advertising, for everything. So I think this is why many people are reluctant to it, I think. And I'm very reluctant to the use of montage. And I'm not saying it's the best way I use it. I think nobody knows exactly how to use it. That's one thing. And yeah. And regarding the irony, well, actually, yeah, I think it is sometimes there is irony, because you clash two things which are very, very on the opposite ends. And this, of course, creates a kind of, I don't know if I can say, a kind of yeah, fun. I don't have other word, but I think the irony comes from the clash of the materials and sometimes of the materials itself. Because I think it's justified to do it, and I think I was asked by this question also regarding the films involving the Holocaust, if there's not too much fun in them, and the only thing I say is that the fun, the humor in them, it doesn't have the direction towards the powerless people. It's never like that. It's always a humor with another direction. And also I always remember that all these stupid regimes, all these crazy things that happen and still happens, have also a dimension of being totally stupid and ridiculous. And Hannah Arendt mentions that in the Eichmann trial, she laughed very, very, very much, many, many times. And I think if Hannah Arendt could laugh at Eichmann trial, I could try to laugh at the Securitate and the propaganda of the regime.
Good. We're essentially out of time, so I want to just make some last observations and a question along with anything you'd like to add. The first is, I'm glad that you mentioned Hannah Arendt, because I can say to people watching this that many, maybe not many, but several of Radu's short films and shorter works can be found online in various forms. And he recently posted a piece online called Dear Intellectuals that I recommend very much, in which Hannah Arendt appears. But Dear Intellectuals is a very potent work. It's a short film.
I was very much attacked for that film. Yes. And one of the intellectuals that attacked me said, why don't you make a film showing the bad sides of the communist regime? And I said, but I just did. It premiered in Berlin. It's called Uppercase Print. But he pretended he never saw and never heard about this film, because next time he made a newspaper article. Yeah. And he came again with the same question, which, you know, this is such a lack of intellectual honesty. Mm-hmm. He said, why not? Why don't you make a film about the communist dictatorship? I said, I did. It's Uppercase Print. And then he pretended not to heard of it and made again in the newspaper. I mean, this is so disgusting. If I knew that, I would never go into an argument with this man.
Sure. And what I want to say as well is not properly a question because we don't have the time for it, but I just want to highlight the way that you use faces in your films, regardless of whether they're faces from archival material or whether they're actors of this present moment. The acting in Uppercase Print is extraordinary, and the way that you film the actors is extraordinary. The power that these people transmit, or the moments when they acknowledge their power or not, is very potent in the film, and it's part of what makes the film very present. And my last question, in fact, has to do with the present, which is, how has the pandemic affected the way you can work with archival material and believe that you can continue to work with archival material, and whether you think this is the ways in which it has impacted you are problems specific to Romania or larger problems affecting people who are interested in working with archival material in any country. And as well, if you'd like to say anything else today.
Well, it's a too big question that I cannot answer, but only in part. So of course the impact on our lives and on the economy and on everything, the impact of the pandemic is huge, and is going to be much bigger in the next years. That the cinema fund now, it's close to zero. The money for cinema will not exist. I'm lucky to, I actually shot a new film. I finished it a few days ago, actually. A feature film, which is a contemporary feature film, and also a short film that I'm doing together with the historian that I did another film, The Exit of the Trains, which is about Holocaust, and it's another film with archives that we will be doing a short film. So I don't know how to answer in the general terms to say how it's going to be in the world of cinema and in the world itself. The only thing I noticed, and I think I'm right on that, is the fact that this pandemic is used with, I don't know if it's a bad intention behind, or maybe it's just what it is used in order to make the cinema overall more commercial than anyway the trend was to have a more and more commercial cinema. I know from my own experience with my last films or with my last projects going to, I don't know, this kind of market for financing, everybody, literally everybody, starting with sales agent, co-producers, distributors and so on, said we want more commercial, more audience friendly, which is, of course, I'm not against this kind of cinema. It's important, but it still exists. But people want more and more and more commercial cinema. And I think from now on, we will see, you can notice very specifically in the BFI Film Festival, in the London Film Festival, that the edition this year is much more commercial than it was before. So I think it's going to be much difficult to make a different kind of cinema, a very not very commercial kind of cinema, and we have to struggle for that. I'm ready to struggle for it as much as I can, but of course it's not on me. This is the result that I see now. But maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not.
Well, regardless of what happens in the future, congratulations on the new film.
Thank you for inviting the film,
yes.
And congratulations with the festival. That at least you're making it. That's very important that festivals like this exist.
Thank you, and it's important that artists like you continue to make your work as best as you can.
Yeah, thanks.
Would you like to? Do you have any surprises for us, Radu?
Oh yes, but I wanted to show you a graffiti of a friend of mine, but I don't know where it got lost. But just a second, because I know I will find it very easy.
And we'll end today's conversation with graffiti.
Yeah, with a graffiti, which I think it's really cool. I just have to just a second, and I'll show it to you. Okay, now I have to choose a virtual background, and just a second. Okay, I got it. There's a friend of mine called Dumitru Gorzo, a painter who made this graffiti, which existed a lot in the city, and you can see it's Ceausescu's face with like an angel, and the text says, "I'll be back in 5 minutes." I come back in 5 minutes. Yeah. So that's it.
Well, we hope it's not true, but it's good to end with humor.
Yeah, no. I think somebody said, I think at some point that before it was one Ceausescu in Romania, and now there are, I don't know, 20 minutes Ceausescu. Everybody. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's good to make us aware, and we thank you for that. And hopefully keep fighting, keep making great work. It's important. And in Romanian, do we say merci? Is that how we say thank you?
Merci, like in France. Yeah.
Okay. So merci, Radu.
Merci as well. Obrigado.
Obrigado, and have a great night.
Bye. Thank you. Have a nice day.